Today we're talking about discontentment, attachments, cessation, and the middle path. The first noble truth, as taught by the Buddha, states that suffering exists. This truth recognizes the reality of suffering and discontentment, and recognizes it as an inherent part of the human experience. The Buddha's teachings provide a framework for understanding and dealing with this suffering and this discontentment in life, and leading us to a path of liberation and enlightenment. Suffering and discontentment can take many forms, including physical pain, emotional distress, and psychological turmoil. It can arise from external circumstances such as disease, loss, or conflict, or from internal factors such as craving, attachment, and ignorance. Regardless of its source, suffering has a profound impact on our lives and our sense of well-being. The Buddha recognized that suffering is not a singular event, but rather a continuous cycle of birth, aging, illness, and death. He taught that this cycle is driven by the law of karma, which holds that our actions have consequences. And these consequences that shape our experiences not only in this life, but also possibly in future lives. So, to break this cycle, the Buddha advised that we develop a deep understanding of the nature of reality and learn to cultivate such virtues as compassion, wisdom, and generosity. The second noble truth highlights the cause of suffering and the cause of discontentment in life. The Buddha taught that suffering arises from cravings and attachments, both which stem from our ignorance. Our ignorance of the impermanence of all things. When we cling to things of this world, we experience frustration and disappointment and heartache. And also when things, as they invariably change or disappear, and everything is impermanent, we continue to suffer. So to reduce suffering, we must learn to cultivate non-attachment, an equanimous mind that is able to accept the realities of life and with wisdom and compassion. The third noble truth points to the possibility of cessation and liberation from this discontentment, from this lack of happiness in our lives. The Buddha taught that it is possible to end the cycle of suffering and attain a state of lasting happiness and peace. But this requires following the Four Noble Truths, or the fourth noble truth, known as the Eightfold Path. A set of principles and practices that lead to the development of wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline. And by walking this path, one can gain insight into the nature of reality, overcoming ignorance, and then experiencing the transcendent peace of nirvana. So, the first noble truth of the Buddha provides a powerful lens for understanding and addressing the suffering and the discontentment that are an inevitable part of the human experience. And by recognizing the nature of suffering, its causes, and the path to liberation, we can gain the wisdom and insight necessary to transform our lives and achieve lasting happiness and peace. The second noble truth states that the cause of suffering is craving and attachment. And according to the Buddha, this is the root of all suffering. The root of all suffering is craving for pleasure and material possessions. And also, existence itself creates suffering. So, the attachment to these desires leads to suffering because they create an unending cycle of craving which can never be satisfied. Craving and attachment arise from a fundamental misunderstanding of reality. We see things as permanent and believe that our happiness lies in acquiring them and holding on to them. This simply leads us to cling to them. And it's this clinging which in turn creates suffering. Our desire for pleasure and material possessions is never ending. And we are constantly seeking more and more. This can lead to dissatisfaction and unhappiness because we are always searching for something that is just out of our reach. So the teachings on craving and attachment offer a different way of looking at the world. They suggest that we can break the cycle of craving and attachment by understanding that everything is impermanent and that happiness cannot simply be found through material possessions. Instead, we must look inward and cultivate peace and happiness within ourselves. Now, the practice of mindfulness is an important tool for breaking the cycle of craving and attachment. Mindfulness helps us to become more aware of our thoughts and feelings and to see things as they truly are. This allows us to see the impermanence of things, understand that our happiness cannot be found in external objects or experiences. So therefore, the second noble truth teaches us that the root of all suffering is craving and attachment. And this is a profound insight, as the power to change our lives if we can understand it and apply it. By cultivating mindfulness and recognizing the impermanence of all things, we can break this cycle of craving attachment and find true happiness within ourselves. The third noble truth states that the cessation of this suffering, the cessation of this discontentment is possible through the elimination of craving and ignorance. This truth outlines the ultimate goal of the Buddhist practice and provides a roadmap for reaching a state of Buddhahood and possibly enlightenment. A state that could also be known as nirvana. Suffering in Buddhism is understood as the universal human experience of physical and emotional pain, dissatisfaction, and unhappiness. The root of all suffering is seen as craving and attachment, and the unquenchable desire for things to be different from how they are. This craving creates a cycle of desire, attachment, and suffering, perpetuating the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. In order to end this cycle of suffering, it is necessary to understand and eliminate the causes of craving and ignorance. Now, the Eightfold Path is one of the central teachings that outlines the steps necessary to achieve this end. Now, these steps include developing the right understanding in life, having the right intentions in life, using the right speech in life, having the right actions in life, having the right livelihood in life, making the right efforts in life, having the right mindfulness and the right concentration. And through the practice of these steps, individuals can develop a deeper understanding of the nature of reality and break free from the illusions that fuel cravings and ignorance. And as understanding grows, craving and attachments are naturally reduced, leading to a state of liberation from suffering. The third noble truth provides a clear and achievable goal for those seeking to end their suffering. By following the path outlined in the Eightfold Path, individuals can cultivate the qualities of mind and heart necessary to reach this state of enlightenment or enlightened understanding, where all suffering is eradicated and true peace and happiness are attained. The third noble truth offers us a profound and transformative message that suffering is not inevitable. It is not an inevitable part of our existence, but can be overcome through the cultivation of wisdom and ethical conduct. Through this understanding, individuals can strive towards a life free from suffering and attain a state of peace and happiness beyond the ordinary human existence. Now, the middle way. The middle way is also a central teaching in Buddhism and is closely related to the fourth noble truth, which is the path that ends the suffering. So the Eightfold Path lays out the steps to be taken to reach liberation from the cycle of rebirth and suffering. While the middle way, or the middle path, refers to the avoidance of extremes in the pursuit of this liberation. As I said, the Eightfold Path consists of 8 steps that must be followed in order. And each of these steps involves a different aspect of a person's life, from their thoughts and intentions to their words and their actions. For example, right understanding refers to having a clear and accurate understanding of the Four Noble Truths and also the nature of reality. Right intentions have a sincere desire to end suffering and achieve enlightenment, not only for oneself, but also for others. Right speech involves speaking truthfully, kindly, and beneficially. Right action involves acting in a way that does not cause harm to oneself or to others. Right livelihood involves earning a living in an ethical manner that does not harm self or others, emotionally, physically, psychologically. Right effort involves making a constant effort to improve oneself and to avoid negative actions. Right mindfulness involves being aware of one's thoughts, feelings, and surroundings in the present moment. And right concentration involves developing mental focus and clarity through meditation. So the middle way refers to the avoidance of all extremes in all aspects of life, particularly in regards to attachment and desires. The Buddha taught that excessive craving and attachment simply leads to suffering, while complete denial of pleasure leads to a joyless existence. So the middle way involves finding a balance between the two extremes, striving for happiness and well-being without becoming attached to it. So let's just recap. Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, as taught by the Buddha, provide a framework for understanding and overcoming the root causes of human suffering. And in this context, the interconnection and the interrelation of discontentment, attachments, cessation, and the Eightfold Path become clear. The First Noble Truth states that all existence is characterized by suffering or discontentment, and that this suffering can take many forms, including physical pain, emotional distress, and mental suffering. And that the root cause of this suffering is our attachment to things, whether they are material possessions, relationships, or even simply our own thoughts and beliefs. The Second Noble Truth identifies craving and attachment as the underlying causes of suffering. We become attached to things and to people. And when these attachments are threatened or come to an end, we experience suffering. This is because we believe that these attachments bring us happiness, when in fact they only bring us temporary pleasure. The Third Noble Truth is the understanding that suffering can be overcome. And this is achieved through the realization of cessation. which is the end of craving and attachment. Cessation allows us to see things as they truly are, and to understand that our attachments to things and people only bring us suffering. The fourth noble truth, the Eightfold Path. It provides a roadmap for achieving cessation and overcoming suffering. And as I mentioned, the Eightfold Path consists of having the right understanding, the right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, making the right efforts, having the right mindfulness, and the right concentration. Now, by following these 8 steps, we can reduce our attachments and develop a deeper understanding of the impermanence of all things. The Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path are interrelated and interconnected in their pursuit of understanding and overcoming human suffering. Discontentment and attachments are the root causes of suffering. And cessation is the ultimate solution. And the Eightfold Path provides the means to achieve cessation and attain a state of peace and happiness in our lives. So, by following the Eightfold Path, we can break the cycle of suffering and attain true happiness in our life, emotional contentment in our life, possibly bringing us to a state of Buddhahood and eventually maybe enlightenment. Thank you for listening today.